This
is TLV1.
TLV1 radio.
Great mixture.
I like television.
This is still V1.
This is
Tel Aviv is a beautiful city.
Great city, great radio.
TLV1.
This is TLV1.
The Tel Aviv Review with Gilad Halpern.
Hello and welcome to the Tel Aviv Review, a program dedicated to the word, to the thought and to debate. I'm your host Gilad Halpern. Every week I'll be hosting writers, scholars, researchers, documentary filmmakers and other people of the kind to talk about their most recent work and how it could make our lives a tad more interesting. Our first guest today will be Professor Ofer Shiff of the Ben-Gurion Research Institute for the Study of Israel and Zionism at Ben-Gurion University of the Negev. He is the author of the recently published The Downfall of Abba, Hillel, Silver and the Foundation of Israel, about the American Jewish leader who, during the watershed period of the mid-20th century, argued for a particular kind of Zionism. He may have lost in the short term, but did he win in the long term? Our second guest will be Naama Nagar, a sociologist from the University of Wisconsin Madison, who back in 2011 was closely involved in two almost simultaneous social protest movements, the one in Wisconsin and also in her native Israel. What parallels could be drawn between the two? More than you can imagine, she will say. Stay tuned. We'll be back after this bit of music. You're listening to the Tel Aviv Review here on TLV1. Welcome back. I'm now joined here in the studio by Professor Ofer Shiff of the Ben-Gurion Institute for the Study of Israel and Zionism. He is the author of The Downfall of Abba Hillel and the Foundation of Israel, that was recently published in English by Syracuse University Press, and is dedicated to the final chapter in the life of an American Reform rabbi who was a prominent Jewish leader as well as Zionist leader, perhaps the first in Jewish American history to mold these two elements into one. Hello, Ofer, and welcome to the Tel Aviv Review.
Hi.
So Abba Hillel Rabbi Abba Hillel was one of the leading figures in Jewish American public life at a momentous period for the community, that is in the 1930s and 1940s, as it was undergoing two major changes. On the one hand, as it was becoming a force to be reckoned with, both domestically and internationally, and on the other, as it was opening up and gradually warming to Zionism. So my first question to you is the following. To what extent was it thanks to Silver's personality and leadership?
I would say that I would begin by saying that Silver was not the first Reform rabbi who was also a Zionist. Actually, the previous main Zionist leader, Stephen Wise, was also a Reform rabbi, and it's quite paradoxical that I would say that many of the pre-state American Zionist leaders were Reforms. And there lies also the answer to your question. I think, yes, first of all, it's true the assumption that are in your question. This is really a watershed period for American Jewry and for Zionism. It's the first time in the 1940s and even the 1930s, but mainly the 1940s after World War II, that Zionism become a real force among American Jewry. That means that almost every second American Jew is Zionist, which is incredible, especially if you compare the numbers to the 20s and teens. Then the American Zionist movement was really a tiny, insignificant movement.
But is it related to the rise of Zionism worldwide with the collapse of assimilationist theories? I mean, is it just a historical coincidence because the Holocaust happened, so people said Zionism is the only answer, or is it more complex than that?
I think it's a great question. I think it's related to the collapse of what you call the assimilation's aspiration. But I think the reform movement, the American Jewish reform movement, was really the one movement that had to cope with this collapse of the aspiration for assimilation or for integration, I would say, more than any other movement. And if I want to sum up Silver's ideology, and actually the reform Jewish movement ideology, that was assimilation, integration without assimilation. Meaning they really wanted a solution for the modern Jewish problem, to enable Jews to be an integral part of American Jewry without assimilating. And the Holocaust, anti-Semitism in the 30s, both in Europe and the United States, really posed a great challenge, how to cope with that.
But so does Zionism in a way, because, the reductionist view of Zionism means that all Jews should go to Palestine, and therefore neither integration nor assimilation is relevant.
That would come after 48, but until 48, those two doctrines, that Zionism really could be an answer to this ideology, meaning that by adopting Zionism, American Jews could feel that there is an alternative that would enable them to integrate without being assimilated. That was one doctrine. And then there was the Israeli doctrine that Zionism means that the negation of diaspora, that all Jews have to immigrate. Those two doctrines were parallel to each other until 48. And until 48, American Jews adopted Zionism because they believed in the first one, that really Zionism was a doctrine that would enable them to become more fully American, to overcome this stigma of being the others.
But were there concerns that are still palpable to this day of dual allegiance, of by the fact of claiming to be, of assuming the Zionist identity, it would mean that American Jews aren't 100% loyal to their country?
Well, that was exactly the opposite assumptions that Silver and other leaders like him tried to advance during the 1940s, meaning that it's in their right as an Americans to be Zionist, because they advocate a doctrine they called cultural pluralism. One of the thinkers that founded was a person, another Zionist named Horace Kallen. And according to that, to be an American means that you are entitled to your identity as part of a group. Not only is it for your individual identity. And it's your right to demand that as a Jew, as part of the Jewish group, you will be considered equal.
But collective identity is not equal, does not equal Zionism. I mean, Zionism is a very particular type of collective identity that has, very significant nationalistic, even chauvinistic elements to
No,
it.
I totally disagree with that. I mean, you really represent maybe current ideas of what Zionism is. If I would not go into an argument, but would represent Silvers and other leaders like them of what Zionism is, Zionism was a way not of being a Jew without feel victimized, without feeling that the ghetto, that being separate from the non-Jewish society is the only way to be a Jew. It was not the only modern Jewish doctrine that advocated such a faith, but it was the main one. So for Silver, his audience and other leaders like him, Zionism was a way to become a Jew who is normal, who is modern, who is
fully assimilated in a way, right?
fully acculturated.
Acculturated.
No, not assimilated, totally not. If you would see Silver, he was a very proud Jew. He spoke Hebrew and English fluently. He knew the Bible thoroughly.
No, but assimilated in the way that you're 100% part of the community you live in, whether you're just like any other or not.
Right? And that doesn't negate in any way you being a proud Jew. I mean, we have in Israel this assumption that you can either be a Jew or an American, and if you're fully acculturated and integrated, you cannot be a loyal Jew, or if you have this collective pride, you cannot be fully American. And Aleph Bet Yoshua, the famous Israeli author, advocated such an idea a few years ago in a lecture in New York. That was not Silver. That was not American Zionism of the 1940s and even the 1950s.
But exactly. This is, in a way, it's this worldview is dated because right now, today, in 2014, it seems odd to think about Zionism without Israel, that Israel wasn't really an important component in it.
No, it's not true that Israel was not the most important component of Zionism. The question was whether Israel was the main goal, the only goal, the ultimate goal, or was only a means to something else, to something higher. And I would tell you that in the 1940s and 50s, even in Israel, even if you read Ben-Gurion, and especially if you read American Zionist leader, Israel was not considered to be the ultimate goal. Israel was only the means to something higher. Silver had a perfect metaphor for that. He said that Jews, until Israel would be founded, should be portrayed as trapped in a vacuum, without air. And every persecution, every anti-Semitic blur would be like something stepping on the oxygen, and they will be left without being able to breathe. Now that Israel exists, now they can realize, they should realize that oxygen, air, is most important. Israel should ensure that they will not have to be concerned all the time with not being able to breathe. But they also should realize that oxygen, while it's very important, it's not the purpose of life. Now, when Israel exists, they should concentrate on what is really important, on what is Judaism or collective Jewish identity means. And that was Zionism for Silver. That was the hope of American Jews.
Well, it was, at the end of the day, especially back then, right after the establishment of the State of Israel, a minority opinion, because Ben-Gurion and the Zionist establishment at the time labored very, very hard to establish Israel as the center of Zionism, this Israel-centered Zionism that left very, very little margin for views as Silver's and other diasporic.
Yeah, unfortunately, what you described is true. It's a tragic story of Zionism, in my belief. Even today, as an Israeli citizen of today, just after the Gaza operation or war. Yes, I think the main purpose of Zionism, and let's forget 1 minute Ben-Gurion, because this is an Israeli, the Zionist in Israel or pre-Israel. But if you talk American Zionism, the main purpose of Zionism in the eyes of Silver and other American Jewish leaders was that Jews would be able to get rid of this necessity to all the time think of survival. And when you all the time just thinking of survival, that is the main point of your entire existence, then you tend to be victim, to feel yourself as a victim. You tend to portray the other as evil and all those things. Israel was supposed to negate all that. Unfortunately, the reverse happened.
But you said leave Ben-Gurion out of it. Can you really leave Ben-Gurion out of it? Because wasn't he the one who consolidated this view of Zionism? This is Ben-Gurionist Zionism. I mean, it came first at the expense of Chaim Weizmann, who had similar views to the ones you described of more global diasporic sort of Zionism, and later on Abba Hillel.
I don't want to do injustice to Ben-Gurion. It's a complex story there. You are right in the sense that 1946, Silver and Ben-Gurion are really allies. They together will take over the Zionist leadership from Weizmann. After 1948, Ben-Gurion pushed Silver aside precisely for what you said. I just want to remind you that Ben-Gurion is a complex story for another interview.
So let's go to Silver's later years. With the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, when his, I wouldn't say, like you say, it wouldn't be the ultimate goal he was aspiring to all the time, but it was an incredible achievement for the Zionist movement with which Silver saw himself allied.
And not only allied. I would venture to say that without Silver, Israel would never be founded. Silver was really responsible for the UN resolution of November 20.
For tipping the balance in Washington in Israel's favor? Is that so?
No doubt.
It comes to him personally. He was the
I would say it without any question that without Silver, it's difficult to picture Israel being approved by the UN.
And then 6 months later, or a year and a half later,
he's gone.
He stands down, goes back to Cleveland, where he's from, where he takes he's in charge of his congregation, of his Reform congregation, and
disappeared
into thin air.
Yeah, and the question is how and why. I think the most interesting thing, without going into details, I also can tell you the details, that he could not fight Ben-Gurion. That is the most interesting and tragic stories for those people like Silver, because Israel was the oxygen. They wanted Jews not all the time to think about the oxygen, about survival, but they could not fight Israel because Israel was so important. And once Ben-Gurion realized for political reason, I think mostly, that silver is a rival, and he tried to throw him away, and he succeeded. Silver just never tried even to fight him.
He was a gentleman at the end of the day.
He was not a gentleman. He realized that he could not fight Ben-Gurion because his audience, his people were enormous. He had Zionist club in every city, in every town in the United States. They would see Silver as a leader, but would never go after...
exactly, so he didn't want to turn the Jewish community against Israel in a way.
He could not even.
Yeah. I see. Do you think that the centrality of Israel in the psyche of diaspora Jews to this very day, I mean, the process that you describe has been in a way reversed. I mean, this is really Israel. It remains to this day the main element of the Jewish identity worldwide. Do you think this really traces back to the seed sown by Silver?
In many ways, yes. In other ways, not. I think in many ways, I think that the way Israel is today so important to American Jews is a defeat to what Silver believed in. Just 2 years ago, there was a book by Peter Beinart who was talking about the defeat of this old Zionism of the 1940s and the 1950s. And in a way, Silver hoped that Zionism, their identification with Israel, would be central to American Jews in a way that really would enable them at last to be fully integrated and to really to make Judaism a basis of something else, of something as he had this theory of going after Robert Frost's poem that, the walls or the fence. Israel would be the fence in the way that it would give Jews this sense of security, of identity,
the reconstruction of the ghetto, in a sense?
Well, ghetto in a positive way.
Yeah. I mean,
there
were positive elements to the ghetto.
Something where you belong to. At the same time, Silver and all the leaders were very suspicious of nationalism and of every particularist doctrine. They wanted what you call the ghetto or the Jewish identification with Israel to become a basis of what they called bridges, of connecting and saying that, if I am now a proud Jew, I can really understand other ethnic groups, other religions, and find the connection and the bridges between them. I don't think that's what happens today.
As a final question, because we'll have to wrap up soon, do you think that history, both in Israel and the United States, does justice to Silver's role and persona?
Certainly not. I don't think people know who is Silver today. I mean, I have an anecdote to tell you about that. I found a newspaper clip for 1952 for May 1st. And May 1st is a full day, and in Israel those days they took it seriously. So on one of the major Israeli newspaper in Hebrew, there was the headline was that Silver just landed at midnight at the airport. Ben-Gurion met him, and they went to the president and formed a coalition. That was a time of political crisis. That means everyone in Israel knew at that time who is Silver, that he is a rival to Ben-Gurion, and if he came to Israel, this is a big surprise if these two rivals are forming a coalition. And I gave it to the class, and nobody in the class in Israel knew who was Silver. And it just tells you where is Silver today? He is gone.
Well, they know it's a street in Ramat Gan, probably.
They know it's a street, and there is a village in the south.
Yeah. Okay, Professor Ofer Shiff, author of The Downfall of Abba Hillel Silver and the Foundation of Israel. Thank you very much for coming in.
Please let me sit down beside you. I've got something to tell you. You should know. I just couldn't wait for not another day. I I love you for more than words can ever say. Honey, living without you is so painful. Yeah, I was tempted to call it a day. Yeah. You've got me in your hand. Why can't you understand? I love you, baby, for more than words can say. Yeah, yeah. I just can't sleep when I lay down long in my bed. The thoughts of you, babe, just linger in my head. Living without you is so painful. Oh, I was tempted to call it a day. You got me in your hand. Why can't you understand? I love you, honey, for more than words can say. Yeah, I love you, honey, for more than words can say. Yes, I do. No.
You're listening to the Tel Aviv Review here on TLV1. Welcome back. I'm now joined here in the studio by Naama Nagar, who is a sociologist from the University of Wisconsin Madison, that is in the United States, of course, who happened to stumble upon a very interesting comparative study. She has drawn parallels between the social protest of 2011 here in her native Israel, and a similarly iconic protest movement in her place of residence, that is Wisconsin, around about the same time. And we're here to talk about that. So, hello, Naama, and welcome to the Tel Aviv Review.
Shalom, Gilad.
Hi.
Great being here.
Thank you very much for coming. So tell us a bit about, is it just an accidental sort of comparative study, or is there more to it? Is there substantial themes that overlap?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, I feel like I bring the American spirit, to rival your British accent. That's great.
Right. Nothing is impossible.
Nothing is impossible.
Mm-hmm.
So around winter 2011, several movements erupted around the Western world that were inspired by the Arab Spring, actually. So it's not a coincidence that a lot of grievances around socioeconomic issues, the austerity economics that was driven by policy following the most recent economic crisis, were waiting. These grievances were spread, and nothing really sparked a collective movement until people didn't see what was happening in Libya, in Egypt, and around the Middle East. Mm-hmm. And then actually Wisconsin was the first, even before the Indignados in Spain. We're speaking about January, February 2011. Soon after current Republic Governor Scott Walker was elected for office, and he drew a new budget bill with a lot of austerity proposal. That was the first. That was the first motive, and so yes, Wisconsin.
Was it part? Just to put it in context of it, was it part of the greater
Occupy movement?
No. I'm asking about the governor himself, of the rightward movement of the Republican Party, the Tea Party movement, etc. Was he part of this?
He's a
Tea
Partist. Mm-hmm. He's funded and supported by the Koch brothers. brothers, again, Tea Parties. And so, yes, he's not only part of, he's in many ways, he's an emblem, and actually he's at the front of a lot of these actions.
Right, okay.
So that happened in Wisconsin. And Israel, there was no such, Israel wasn't as reactive as the Wisconsin
There
movement.
was no trigger.
It was more, exactly. There wasn't any specific trigger. There were many policies and an ongoing, 3 decades of neoliberal policies. And so, but the summer brought with it several, it was a concurrence of a lot of different factors. The summer vacation for students, even, just giving them time to mobilize, and so on and so forth. And so it so happened, and in between Wisconsin, which took place around February and March 2011, the highlight, and Israel, where the movement mobilized in July and August 2011, the Indignados in Spain erupted in May that year. And so we're speaking about a wave of protest in what is known as post-industrial economies, kind of developed economies, which later on, of course, evolved into the Occupy movement. And they had a lot of similarities. First of all, the Occupy strategy. So occupying public spaces, occupying, in the case of Wisconsin, it wasn't summer, it was the dead of winter.
Yeah.
So they occupied the Capitol building itself, just laying sleeping bags on the front and on the ground floor, creating info stations and so on and so forth. In Spain, in Israel, it was in public spaces. The same thing repeated itself in Occupy Wall Street in New York, Occupy Oakland, and so on and so forth.
Was it a large-scale movement as much as it was in Israel and Spain and other places in the world? Or was it like there was the small nucleus of activists who...
It was
because
huge.
the global protest movement of 2011 consisted of both.
Exactly. So several movements such as Occupy Wall Street were very vocal, but numbers-wise, it wasn't as significant as the movement in Israel and Wisconsin. In Israel and Wisconsin, both are a state with relatively little population, and around 5% of the total population mobilized. That's pretty amazing.
It is
and
amazing.
around the same numbers as well, 350,000 people in Wisconsin in the largest rally, and about 400,000 in Israel in the largest rally. So huge mobilization, ongoing for several weeks, Saturday after Saturday, rallying in the streets, and also many smaller groups, of course, mobilized around the main rallies, around the main occupation of whatever public space, Rothschild Street, etc.
And another striking resemblance is that both movements amounted to absolutely nothing in the bottom line. I mean, they were huge, but they didn't really change anything.
I think that's not true, but not necessarily for the best. So both movements amounted to something, but not their intended goal.
Right.
I think in Israel, there was a huge
They only not only didn't they make things better, they made things worse.
Yeah, in some respect, I think so. So first of all, let's talk about the electoral shift. That's something that's very noticeable in Israel. The election that preceded the mobilization in Israel saw a tremendous shift in the party map, and most pronouncedly the rise of the Yesh Atid party, which kind of co-opted a lot of the language of the protests, spoke to the needs of the middle classes, spoke about, their slogan was, "Where's the money? Show me the money."
Yeah.
And now they're just continuing neoliberal policies under that banner. And we're seeing the transfer of budgets.
It is led, we should say, by the current finance minister, Yair Lapid.
Exactly. Similarly, the movement and the movement in Israel wasn't even sure that it had electoral goals, not at first at least, and it took some time until some people from the movement decided, we want to run for Knesset, but it wasn't an objective of the movement as such. They definitely wanted to see an overarching change, not only in policy making and in budgeting, but also in the society itself, in people becoming more aware, demanding transparency. And we are seeing a little bit of that. I'm actually pretty optimistic about all sorts of groups such as the Social Guard. This is a group of volunteers who go to Knesset meetings nowadays and monitor and send reports and make things more transparent. And I think that's a great achievement, and that's wonderful.
And are we seeing similar things in Wisconsin now, 3 years on?
Wisconsin is a sadder story. There were some similar things during mobilization. There was a public hearing that the Democrats insisted on holding. Of course, it was another difference was it was a very partisan movement, right?
Yeah.
And because the party system in the U.S. is different than here. So as soon as you rise as opposition to the governor, it's pretty obvious that the movement is identified with the Democrats. And so the Democrats insisted on having a hearing, a public hearing. And that was a tremendous thing. I think it was pretty unprecedented in the entire United States. We had an 100-hour long hearing wherein the public came from all over Wisconsin. People drove for hours to just give their piece about how the new budget bill is going to affect them. And that was pretty amazing. Unfortunately, we don't see that repeated nowadays because, again, the government hasn't changed. And so the people in office are still the people in office.
Exactly. That's maybe the greatest failure of both protests, both here and in Wisconsin, and that is
That's true.
they demanded some sort of game change, and they got it because there were elections held right afterwards, and
Exactly.
they lost.
That's true. There was a campaign to try and impeach Scott Walker and to elect a new governor, and that didn't work. The re-election ended up in Walker being reelected. And in Israel, we see that the elections, other than bringing the Yesh Atid to power, brought no meaningful change.
Yeah.
So that's true.
There was no really sea change in the sense that people's eyes were open and they saw things differently. They knew probably deep down what needed to be done, but they couldn't really translate it into political action.
Yes, we're still lacking the tools to translate all these emotions and feelings that the public now shares, because it's still easy for all sorts of charlatans and even legitimate politicians to try and claim their share, but people still need to learn how to mobilize all these feelings effectively.
What about the political makeup of Wisconsin and Israel? Is Wisconsin equally divided as Israel? Israel is really, really divided to the core. There are some states in the United States that are very homogenous politically. Where is Wisconsin on this spectrum?
It's a great question. It's considered a purple state.
Right.
But there has been an interesting trend in recent years whereby people vote overwhelmingly for Barack Obama in federal elections, but to the Republicans in the local elections, in national elections.
Right.
So it really depends what the issues
because
are.
they support Walker's domestic policies?
Yes, absolutely.
Those that actually sparked, in a way, the protest movement.
As well as his language. He speaks, the conservatives now adopt a language speaking of family values, being the family man. A lot of the pro-Walker signs that we were seeing around us while we were mobilizing were things like Scotty, my homeboy, things like that. Again, it's a lot about emotions and what do people identify with. And he is the all Wisconsinite guy who hunts, who his family's had their local business for many years and many generations. And I think that speaks a lot to Americans. And the divides in Israel are very different,
Yeah. What was it like for you as a foreigner? Were you the odd one out there? Or did they see themselves as part of this global protest movement?
It's interesting. While I'm a foreigner, I'm also actually a taxpayer because I'm an employee of the University of Wisconsin Madison. And as you know, in the United States, notions of citizenship really revolve around tax paying, whereas in other, the continental concept, the European concept that's also shared by Israelis is much more about voting.
Yeah.
But as an employee...
And identifying with the government, if you take it one step further.
As well,
Yeah.
that's true. But as an employee, I first of all had a stake in the budget bill because the budget bill was a lot about labor issues and preventing the right for collective bargaining. It's called in the United States, ironically, a right-to-work state. Right-to-work meaning that people don't have a right to collective bargaining.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So as a member of the Teaching Assistant Association, I was actually a unionist, among other unionists.
Right.
So in that sense, I wasn't a foreigner. I was actually very much at the core of what was happening. Our union was actually one of the first to mobilize, one of the first to occupy the Capitol building. So that was tremendous. We were also just geographically located very near to the Capitol. So we actually staffed a lot of, the headquarters there. We did a lot of the legwork on the ground floor. My foreignness felt, it had two ramifications at the time. First of all, whenever the time came for a significant direct action, I didn't take part because I didn't want to be arrested, which might mean that I get deported.
Yeah.
So I said, thank you, but no thank you. Other than that, while my friends were busy trying to talk to local media, I was really trying to write about everything that was happening in Hebrew, because I did get the sense that we're part of something that might be global. I mean, Indignados hasn't happened yet, but definitely the Arab Spring was still in full might. And I already knew that things that start in the United States end up reaching Israel. And I'm speaking very specifically about the Wisconsin program, which is a welfare to workfare program that denies people the right for state support and unemployment benefits, and forces them to work for very little wages, without childcare, without a lot of the other benefits. And that was directly imported from Wisconsin to Israel. It's known in Israel as Tochnit Wisconsin.
Yeah, the Wisconsin program.
And so I felt an urge to speak about what was happening, to let Israelis know about how the Tea Party is changing policies on the ground, to let people know about how the public can mobilize. And so during the protest in Wisconsin and the aftermath, including the re-election and so on and so forth, I wrote about 7 different pieces, which I published in local websites, local blogs, and also one of the national newspapers sent a reporter that interviewed myself and another Israeli activist there. So I really felt the urge to make it known, to just make sure that there is something in Hebrew for future generations, kind of like an archive of a left movement.
Do you feel that it sent some shockwaves into the Israeli debate? Did the protest movement
not the Wisconsin one?
No, not at all.
Indignados has.
Yeah.
Wisconsin, it's far away. It's a country no one's ever heard of. It's a state no one's ever heard of.
Yeah.
Israelis, it's a different time zone. There were all these different, gaps to bridge. Whereas I know for a fact that some people came straight from the Indignados protests in Barcelona and Madrid to Tel Aviv and took part in the Rothschild General Assembly, teaching people the hand movements, the gestures that are used for consensus, collective decision-making, and so on and so forth. And so I really do think that, it didn't hurt that I wrote whatever I wrote in Hebrew, but I don't think it had any direct effect.
Well, one day maybe. Naama Nagar, sociologist from the University of Wisconsin Madison.
Yes.
Thank you very much for coming on the Tel Aviv Review and telling us about this rather obscure protest movement, but that does mean a lot to us here in Israel and perhaps other places in the world. So thank you and good luck, and would love to have you on again when you study another protest movement. Who knows? One day.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Naama, and goodbye.
Goodbye.
Are you such a dream?
was the Tel Aviv Review for this week. Thank you very much for listening. Of course, big thanks to our guests and to Tammy Goldenberg, the technical producer of this show. Do not forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and please do get in touch with comments and suggestions at Gilad, Gilad, at tlv1.fm. Join us again next week for another edition of the Tel Aviv Review, and until then, goodbye.
האור נוגע בפנים, עיניים עצומות, כבר ער בפנים, יודע שצריך, הוא מתחיל לרוץ, כולנו עייפים, איך כל יום מתחיל, את זה אני יודע, הדלת מסתובבת, ים שקט, או גלים, או כמה חברים, מרחוק אני יודע שאת רואה אותי, כבר לא ילדים, תמיד לובש אותם בגדים, ולך זה לא אכפת כמה אמיתי. את זה אני יודע, הדלת מסתובבת, ים שקט, או גלים, או כמה חברים, ים שקט, ים שקט, ים שקט, ים שקט, ים שקט, ים שקט.